Hey everyone, Steve Siebold back with Mental Toughness Podcast.org. Mental Toughness Podcast.org. Make sure you hit the subscribe button at the website and we'll send you an email every week with the new episode. Okay, so let's talk about one of the things that's going on in the United States right now that's just got everybody up in arms, and I think it's really reverberating around the world as things do, that are of this magnitude, and that's the January 6th investigation into the insurrection on January 6, 2021, when rioters invaded our nation's capital here in the United States in Washington, and all these things that went on. Of course, it's most of it was captured on video and audio and text messaging back and forth. And so why do I bring this up with mental toughness? This is a perfect example. Perfect, really, I should say, not example, I should say opportunity to practice mental toughness and to check your own level of your skill in this area. Because again, when mental toughness, if you really break it down, people, have lots of definitions for mental toughness, but if you really break it down, it's your ability to control your emotions and manipulate your emotions really under pressure. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, you can say a lot of things about it. You say, well, it's when you succeed when you're really under the heat. Well, yeah, succeeding under the heat is emotional control. That's really it boils it down to its essence. All right, so this January 6th investigation, which, you got people on say Donald Trump's side who say, oh, well, it wasn't an insurrection. It was just it was a day in the park at the Capitol. They were just touring the Capitol. 5 people died, of course, and over 100 people were injured, but it was just a, tour of the Capitol. And then you have the other people that say, this was the worst insurrection in the history of America. So I'm not going to get into the politics of it because that's not the point of a Mental Toughness podcast here. If you want to really get into that, I have actually posted, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Steve Siebold. Just type in Steve Siebold channel on YouTube, and you can see. I wanted to get some engagement, so last night I did a video on that. By the time you see this, it'll have been a while, but probably a week or so. But you can check that out, and that's a little more political. I don't want to be political here. It's so much. Even there, I wasn't that political, but I want people to debate the politics of it. But in this particular podcast, I just want to talk about how this relates to controlling your emotions. So people tend, if you're in the United States, and maybe if you're in a different country, even you're watching this, I mean, I think that it's hard to argue whether you're on no matter what side you are on, that democracy is at stake. The United States is in the fight of its life, and I can't believe I'm actually saying that. But so goes the United States in terms of being a democracy. So goes the world. Of the democratic world anyway. And I think everyone knows that when the U.S. is so large that in this area that if we catch a cold, if we sneeze, everyone catches a cold. The world is in trouble here. And the United States is in this area is in trouble as well. And it's a scary time. But in the context of mental toughness, the question is, can you control your emotions enough in this particular area, no matter how strongly you believe in one side or the other? Can you control your emotions enough to be objective about the facts? Because, a big part of mental toughness, as we talk about all the time, is critical thinking, the ability to think without emotion. Critical thinking is all based on, it has no emotion. It's literally emotionless thinking. It's the ability to make decisions based on data, based on evidence, based on proof, based on facts. And that's it. Period. There is no opinion in critical thinking. As a matter of fact, our journalistic society in the United States used to be basically made up of a bunch of critical thinkers that reported the news based on facts, based on data, based on evidence, right? Based on proof. And now we have a bunch of people that give their opinions that are completely emotionally charged on both sides too. I'm taking that one side or the other because both sides do it. They're biased and they show their bias. And these are people who are really not journalists. They're entertainers. There are some journalists out there, I think, and we probably all have our differing opinions of who they may be, but most of them are opinion people. They're giving you their opinions based on their emotions, which has a whole different set of criteria behind it in terms of decision making. When you're talking about critical thinking, we're talking about emotionless thinking. So here's the challenge for all of us. No matter which side you're on, I challenge every single person that's interested in becoming more mentally tough should be watching these hearings. And if you can't, I mean, I realize they're at different times, and we all have jobs and businesses and things to do, and it's busy and all that, and these hearings take a while to watch. Watch it on YouTube. Watch the replay. They're all over the place. I think Fox News has even decided that they're going to join the coverage. I don't think they're going to cover all of it. They didn't cover the first part because I think there's a lot of people involved, and I have done hundreds and hundreds of interviews on Fox News, okay, in New York, out of New York, in all over the country, as a matter of fact, all over the world. I've done remotes all over the world for Fox, as a matter of fact. And so Fox has actually been very good to me. But Fox has decided to take a different standpoint here, I think because they're part of the story, and that may or may not be good for them. I'm not sure if I'm right about that or not. I know they're part of the story, but I'm not sure if that's why they decided not to participate in the first hearing. But even if you're a big Fox fan, or you're not a Fox fan, or you're a CNN fan, or you hate CNN, whatever it is, I would implore you to watch these hearings and evaluate the facts. Forget about the personalities. It doesn't matter. Now, this is in the context of mental toughness. I mean, outside of that, you can, obviously, we're all entitled to our own opinions and all that kind of thing. But in terms of practicing your mental toughness, practice being a more robotic-like critical thinker. Because as soon as you mix emotion into decision making, you basically end up with drunkenness. If you've ever had more than 2 or 3 beers or 2 or 3 drinks, the more you drink, the dumber you get. I'm not opposed to drinking. I like having a double vodka at night. I probably, I've enjoyed that for a long time. I'm not against drinking, but there's no question that you get dumber, the more you drink. And emotion is the exact same thing. Drugs are the exact same thing. But emotion is one of the most dangerous because we know that drugs do that. That drugs make you dumber, and alcohol makes you dumber. It's a drug, and other things make you dumber. But emotion is insidious because we think, well, I'm not taking a substance. I'm not ingesting something. I'm just thinking something or feeling something. Oh, it makes no difference. Emotion can make people stupid. Absolutely. They will believe we, and I'm part of it. We will believe the unbelievable if we have enough emotion surging through our veins. And it's scary. Smart people can become dumb fast. Just like, give a smart person 6 shots of tequila and see what happens. Oh, they get dumb really, Stu. I saw a comedian the other day, and I was watching, I think it was TikTok, some funny stuff on that app. And so once in a while I'll watch it because it's just funny. The comedian said, when the best time is to take a shot? Never. Never. It's never good. You just do dumb things. You think dumb things. You say dumb things. And if you take enough of them, you wake up the next morning going, oh, no, I need to change my identity. I need to move away. We've all probably experienced that. And if you haven't, you're not missing anything. Don't do it. It's better off that you don't do it. But emotion is like that. And of course, we think of that with substances, but we don't think about it typically unless you're into mental toughness and, psychological performance training and that type of thing. Like you're probably into it because you're on this podcast. And, I'm speaking to athletes. I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, business people, professionals, people that need mental toughness, obviously. And I want you to challenge yourself to watch these hearings. I don't care if you're yelling at the TV. I yell at the TV. I'm like a maniac. Is that letting my emotions get out of hand? Yes, it is. But I'm not hurting anything because what I'm trying to do, I don't always succeed, but what I try to do is evaluate the facts, the data, the proof. Okay, why am I bringing this up in terms of the January 6th investigation? Because it's not about politics in this context. It's just about because it's so charged. Because it is so emotional. Both sides are digging in. The pro-Trump people are saying, oh, President Trump's the greatest thing that ever lived. He's the next, Jesus Christ. He's the Messiah. I mean, you got some people out there saying a lot of things that, I've known Donald Trump for 25 years. I don't think he's the next Messiah. Whether you love him or hate him. I'm pretty sure he's not. I've known him for a long time. But that aside, you got people really digging in other words, they're really pro-Trump, really pro-Trump. And then you got people on the other side that hate Trump. They think he's the devil. Well, I've known him for 25 years. I'm pretty sure he's not the devil. But people are digging in, and they're on the other side, and they want to put him in jail, and they think he's the worst human being in the history of the world, whatever. Okay, so that's why this is such a great opportunity to practice mental toughness in this particular circumstance, this particular situation, because it is so charged. And I don't know, maybe you're not charged about it. Maybe you're one of these people that just doesn't get too involved in politics, and and you're not really too worried about anything, and maybe you're better off thinking that way. I'm not sure, but at the same time, it seems like most people I'm talking to are. And so dig into it. Watch these hearings, even if you can't stand it. I think one of the key things that I recommend to people all the time is, if you're really into one side, especially right now with the political polarization in the country, if you're really into one side or the other, let's say you're a big MSNBC fan, which obviously leans left. Oh, they say don't lean left. Of course they lean left. Or then if you're a big MSNBC fan, then what I'd suggest you do is certainly watch your channel, but then, because you'll enjoy it, and it's more of your ideology, but then also go to the other side of the ideological spectrum, which is Fox. Okay? Watch Fox and then see what they're saying. And you might be throwing things at the TV. It's okay. Get the other side, because you guys, let's be honest. If we're talking about critical thinking, chances are that Fox, if we're talking about Fox and MSNBC on both sides of the political spectrum, odds are pretty good that Fox is not all wrong, and MSNBC is not all wrong, and CNN is not all wrong. They're probably they're biased. They're both biased. There's no question. CNN is too. They're all biased. People are biased. I mean, it's hard not to be, unless they're pure journalists, and I don't think there's many of those left. For you older people, listen to this. Walter Cronkite, I'm afraid, is dead, both literally and figuratively. There are not too many Walter Cronkites left, I'm afraid. We have entertainers on TV now. They're sensationalists. They're driving traffic and eyeballs and listeners and all the rest of it by making sensationalistic claims. And they're entertainers, and they're very, very, very rich as a result. Walter Cronkite was not that rich, not compared to some of the people on TV. But on both sides, both sides. So watch these hearings and see if you can control your emotions enough to do one thing and one thing only. Evaluate the evidence. That's it. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care if you hate Trump, you love Trump. Okay, just watch the evidence and ask yourself, does the evidence prove that Donald Trump should be in jail? Or does the evidence prove that this is just a big hype, a big sham that the Democrats are putting on for political gain? You decide based on the evidence, based on this investigation. Again, no matter what side you're on, this investigation has we all watched it on television. I don't think we need to bring in too many witnesses here. We watched it. I watched it live. You probably watched it live. I couldn't even believe what I was watching, like everybody else. It's all on, not all of it, but a lot of it's on video. There's text messages. This is all proven. There are literally people in this investigation. They interviewed over 1,000 people. And there are people literally right now who are saying, I never said this, and we have proof through text messages. We have them on videotape saying these things, and they're trying to deny it. The sad thing is for these people is posterity is not going to be kind to people who just lie. I don't know how these people sleep at night and how they feel their legacy is going to turn out. But if you're a liar and you're caught on tape, that's going to be a pretty tough deal. I think they're not thinking long term. But and again, it's on both sides, because you listen to the reporting and you hear them both exaggerating. So no one's perfect in this situation. I get whatever side you lean on, and I suppose we all have a side. But at the same time, if you can be a critical thinker, if you can check your emotions at the door and say, I'm not going to get emotional at this point. I'm just going to look at the facts. Okay. I remember, when I was playing professional tennis and amateur tennis coming up, one of the things my coaches tried to teach me is they said, look, whatever the score is, play the score. Stop thinking about how well you're playing, how well you're not playing. Play the game you were taught to play and play the score. Okay. Think about the score. Take one step at a time. Do not get overly emotional. Be an emotional neutral. Yeah, you can get all upset afterwards, or you can get all happy afterwards if you win. But while you're in the fight, maintain emotional neutral. I get it. If you're saying to yourself, hey, Seabold, easier said than done, you're absolutely 100% right. Easier said than done. I get it. But that's why doing this, watching this investigation, these hearings, is a way to practice, because you practice and say, I'm just going to look at the facts, right? That's it. I'm going to listen to the facts, the evidence, the data. That's it. The proof. That's it. And whatever that adds up to be, that I'll add that up and say, well, that's most likely what happened one side or the other. Okay. If the Democrats let's say the committee, it's a bipartisan committee, but it's mostly Democrats. If they decide that, if you watch the evidence, you decide, well, they're just trying to put on a show here for politics. Then if the evidence supports that, well, then you reach that conclusion. But you reach the conclusion based on data, critical thinking, which is comprised of data, evidence, proof, and that type of thing, as opposed to emotion. See how you do. The more, I will tell you this, after doing this for a long time, the more you do it, the better you get. That's why I always tell people on the far right, I say, watch the far left. And the people on the far left, watch the far right. Get other points of view, because most likely there's truth on all sides. There's not one right and one wrong. That's the problem, is, with political polarization or polarization of any kind, of any stripe. People say, we're all right and they're all wrong. And that is usually not true. Life, you reach a point in your life, depending on your age, I think, in your experience, you reach a point in life where you realize things are not black and white. Life is mostly gray. And that's why it's complex, because it isn't black and white. And either is politics, and either are people, and either are most issues that we're dealing with in this country. They're gray. And so what we need to do, obviously, when you're talking about I'm just to make one political statement, sort of political statement, not on one side or the other, but in terms of critical thinking, what we have to do in a democracy is you have to arrive somewhere in the middle. You can't dig in and say, we're all right and they're all wrong. And the other side says the same thing, because that is not going to turn out to be a democracy. That is the structure, the fundamental structure of an autocracy. Then if you're all right and they're all wrong, and they feel the same way, well, then you need a dictator to tell us what to do, because we can't meet in the middle, because we're like children. That's basically how children think. Children can be bullies, and they can dig in and they say, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. It's a very childish mindset. It's very easy to adopt because it's so simple. You're all wrong and I'm all right. That's usually not the case in anything. It's like saying, well, if you get divorced, you'd say, well, I was all right and she was all wrong, or she was all right and I was all wrong. Unlikely. Critical thinking just does not support that. The evidence will not support that, most likely. So it's a great chance to practice this skill and dig in. And because I'll tell you, man, if you're into this at all, and I hope every American is into it, because I really believe that democracy, we are the shining city on the hill. I'm not saying America is great in everything, because we are not. We have a lot of problems in this country, and it's one of the things that, at least, I'm 57 years old, and I grew up with being told in our public schools that America's the greatest country in the history of the world, and we're the greatest in everything and all that kind of stuff. And of course, that's not true. Yes, we are great in some ways, and we are lousy in some ways. That's not my opinion. That's based on evidence. That's based on data. And I could do a whole show based on that. And I think you know what I'm talking about. I don't think I have to convince you of that. But we are not the greatest country in a lot of ways. And but we are great. We are a great country in some ways. And one of the ways we become great is we were able to come together despite our sometimes radical differences. And there are no more radical differences than we are today, but we need to come together. We can't act like children. We need to bridge the gap and come together, or democracy is dead. That's a big thing to say, but it's dead. If this doesn't happen pretty fast over the next few years, I think we're going to have a totally different world order, and it's not going to be a good one. We are not going to enjoy it, especially people that love freedom and have been free their whole lives, because freedom will be gone. That's what's at stake here. It's a big deal. So anyway, I'll wrap up the show with that. So I try again. If I sounded political at all, that wasn't the goal. It's hard and not to let things bleed over, because it's a very passionate topic, but a topic of which we have a lot of passion. I think all of us that are American citizens, because it's such an important time. But this is more in the context of again, controlling your emotions, using critical thinking, and practicing it as a skill. Because, and this is the last thing I'm going to wrap up with. It is a skill. It's a skill to control your emotions. It's a skill to be able to be calm when you're in the midst of a storm, psychological, emotional, physical, or other. It really is. The more you practice it, the better you get. Okay, so remember, subscribe to the podcast, Mental Toughness Podcast.org. Org. Mental Toughness Podcast, not .com. Mental Toughness Podcast.org, O-R-G. We'll hit the subscribe button. Fill out your name and email. We'll send you a notice every week, an email, and to let you know the new episode is in, so you never have to wonder where your next episode is. With that, thanks for watching the show. I'm Steve Seatbelt. See you next time.